Formula One just punished a driver for breaking the rules, then admitted the system measuring him may have been wrong. That alone would be serious. But this scandal gets worse. Because Pierre Gasly got his podium taken away, then restored. George Russell lost a race he may never get back. McLaren is fighting the decision. Red Bull has been dragged into the chaos. And drivers across the grid are now facing the one question no racing driver ever wants to ask. What if the penalty was not the mistake? What if the system itself was? A few tenths in the pit lane became a podium controversy, a legal fight, and a warning that one broken measurement can change careers, points, and even a championship. And the most dangerous part is simple. If Formula One cannot fully fix its own errors, then the next driver punished might not get justice at all. Subscribe to the channel. At first, the drivers tried to treat this like another ugly penalty debate. They have seen plenty of them before. A stewarding decision drops. A radio message explodes. A team principal walks into the media pen looking like he has swallowed fire. Fans argue for hours, then the next race slowly pulls attention away. That is the normal cycle. But this time, something felt different. Because the Monaco controversy did not begin with a wild crash, a desperate overtake, or a driver forcing another car into the wall. It began with a number. A tiny number. The kind of number that looks cold, precise, and impossible to argue with. And that is exactly why it became so dangerous. Pierre Gasly had crossed the line in third place for Alpine. For a driver, a podium is never just a result. It is a message to everyone who doubted him. It tells the garage that the pain was worth it. It tells the engineers that the late nights mattered. It tells the driver himself that, even in a brutal season, one perfect afternoon can still happen. Gasly had earned that feeling. Then the result changed. 2 separate 5-second penalties for pit lane speeding took the podium away. Third place became 7th. A career moment became a legal dispute. And Gasly was left trying to explain something that did not feel real. That is where the emotion broke through. Drivers are trained to stay controlled. They know every sentence can become a headline. They know anger can make them look careless. So most of the time, they choose careful words. But Gasly sounded crushed. Not annoyed. Not mildly disappointed. Crushed. And that matters, because when a driver reacts like that, the paddock listens. The reported speeds were barely above the pit lane limit. Around 60.1 kilometers per hour and 60.4 kilometers per hour in a pit lane limited to 60. To most people, that sounds almost ridiculous. But Formula One lives inside tiny margins. A tenth can win pole. A tenth can lose a position. A tenth can turn clean air into traffic. So the sport treats small numbers like giant events. The problem was not just that the numbers were small. The problem was that Alpine believed the numbers were wrong. They argued that Gasly had activated the pit lane speed limiter before entering the pit lane. That is supposed to protect a driver from exactly this kind of mistake. It is like setting a limit on the car so it does not cross the forbidden line. So if the limiter was active, and the system still said Gasly was speeding, the question became unavoidable. Did the driver fail the rule, or did the measuring system fail the driver? That one question turned a penalty into a scandal. Because once drivers hear that the measurement itself may be wrong, everything changes. A racing incident can be debated. Drivers understand that. They live with judgment calls every weekend. Was there enough space? Was the move too late? Did someone gain an advantage? Those arguments are part of the sport. But measurement is supposed to be different. Measurement is supposed to be the part they can trust. The timing line. The speed trap. The pit lane loop. The official number. Those things are meant to be solid. If they are not solid, then the drivers are racing inside uncertainty. And uncertainty is the one thing a racing driver cannot accept. Because inside the cockpit, decisions happen too quickly for doubt. A driver cannot enter the pit lane wondering whether the equipment is calibrated correctly. He cannot defend into a corner while guessing whether the rules will be applied the same way as last week. He cannot drive at the limit if the limit keeps moving. That is why the Monaco case spread through the paddock so fast. It was not only about Gasly. It was a warning to every driver. If a system error can take a podium away from him, it can take points away from anyone. It can change a championship. It can damage a reputation. It can make a clean race look illegal. And once that fear enters the grid, it does not disappear easily. George Russell's situation made the fear worse. His race was also caught in the penalty chaos, and the consequences were brutal. Once a penalty is served during a Grand Prix, it cannot simply be removed like a line on a results sheet. It changes the race while the race is alive. It changes track position. It changes strategy. It changes tires. It changes traffic. It changes the fights a driver is allowed to have. So even if someone later admits the original measurement had a problem, the driver cannot go back and race the Grand Prix he should have had. That is the nightmare. Gasly could get a podium restored because his penalties were added after the race. Russell could not get his race rebuilt because his penalty had already shaped everything that came after. And for drivers, that difference is terrifying. It means justice may depend not only on whether the decision was wrong, but on when the damage happened. After the race, maybe it can be corrected. During the race, maybe it is gone forever. That is why this controversy became much bigger than a pit lane speed limit. It exposed a system that can act fast when it punishes, but slowly when it repairs. And drivers notice that. They notice when punishment arrives in seconds, but answers arrive days later. They notice when a podium can vanish before the full truth is understood. They notice when one driver is restored, while another driver is told the race cannot be unwound. That is how frustration turns into distrust. And distrust is dangerous in Formula One, because the entire sport runs on belief. Drivers believe the timing screens. They believe the sensors. They believe the pit lane limiter. They believe the stewards have the right information. They believe that when the checkered flag falls, the race has a real ending. Monaco made that belief weaker. And once belief starts to crack, every future penalty becomes heavier. Not just because of the time lost. Not just because of the points lost. But because the driver now has to wonder whether the system saw the truth, or only a broken version of it. Then the anger spread beyond one garage. Because every driver on the grid understood the hidden danger immediately. Gasly's podium was the headline. His pain was the emotional center of the controversy. But the real fear was not limited to Alpine. It was the idea that any driver could do everything correctly, follow the procedure, trust the limiter, trust the timing system, trust the official numbers, and still be thrown into a penalty fight he cannot control. That is what made this different from a normal stewarding argument. Formula One drivers can live with risk. They live with risk every time they turn into a corner side by side. They live with risk when rain hits the track and the car starts moving underneath them. They live with risk when a tire begins to fade and the rear of the car feels just a little too light. Risk is part of the job. But invisible uncertainty is different. A driver can fight another driver. A driver can fight tire wear. A driver can fight pressure. What he cannot fight is a measuring system he only discovers was flawed after the race has already been damaged. And this is where George Russell's situation became the warning sign nobody could ignore. Russell was pulled into a related penalty spiral, and for Mercedes, the damage was immediate. A penalty changed the shape of his Grand Prix. Then the way it was served created an even worse consequence. Suddenly, a race that could have produced a major result turned into frustration, lost points, and a question that could not be answered cleanly. What would Russell's race have looked like if the original penalty problem had not existed? That sounds simple, but it is almost impossible to solve. Because a Formula One race is not a math problem where you erase one number and everything else stays still. A penalty changes the future. It changes when a driver pits. It changes which cars he comes out behind. It changes whether he has clean air or dirty air. It changes tire temperature. It changes battery use. It changes the risks he has to take to recover. It changes the way other drivers race around him. Once that happens, you cannot recreate the Grand Prix that should have happened. You can only stare at the result and imagine the version that disappeared. That is why Russell's case felt so brutal. Gasly's penalties were added after the race, so they could be removed from the final classification. That was painful, but at least the correction could be written onto the result. Russell's penalty was served during the race. That means the damage lived inside the race itself. And once the damage lives inside the race, no appeal can fully bring it back. That distinction is the heart of the scandal. Not every wrong penalty is equal. Some wrong penalties can be erased. Others become permanent because the race has already bent around them. And drivers know exactly what that means. It means the timing of a mistake can decide whether justice is possible. If the mistake lands after the checkered flag, there may be a legal path. If the mistake lands during the race, the driver may be trapped forever inside the consequences. For a driver, that is terrifying. Because they are judged by results, not by lost possibilities. Nobody puts an imaginary podium in the record books. Nobody gives a driver points for the race he might have had. Nobody remembers a season by saying, he would have been higher in the standings if the system had not made him serve a penalty that later looked questionable. History records the result. And if the result was shaped by an error, the driver carries it anyway. That is why the frustration became bigger than Gasly's heartbreak. It became Russell's lost opportunity. It became Piastri's uncertainty. It became Hadjar's disappearing moment. It became every driver looking at the same system and realizing, this could be me. And when drivers start thinking that way, the psychology of the grid changes. A pit entry is no longer just a pit entry. It becomes a moment of doubt. Am I safe? Is the limiter enough? Is the measurement correct? Could I be punished even if the car says I did everything right? That doubt may only last a second, but in Formula 1, a second is an eternity. Even a small hesitation can cost track position. Even a tiny extra margin can destroy an undercut. Even one cautious pit lane entry can put a driver behind traffic and ruin the entire strategy. So the scandal did not only affect the race that had already happened. It threatened the way future races would be driven. And that is where McLaren's reaction became so important. When Gasly was restored, Alpine had a reason to celebrate. But McLaren looked at the same decision and saw another problem. Because if Gasly gets third place back, someone else moves down. Oscar Piastri was part of that reshuffle. A correction that helped one driver could hurt another. And McLaren's concern went deeper than one trophy or one place. They were asking whether the correction itself created sporting unfairness. That is a dangerous argument for the governing body, because it means the problem is no longer just the original mistake. Now the fix is being challenged too. And when both the mistake and the fix are controversial, the system has lost control of the story. McLaren's position raised the issue of consistency and the integrity of competition. Those words sound formal, but the meaning is simple. If teams follow the information available to them, adjust their procedures, and race cautiously because they believe the system requires it, are they then punished when another team successfully challenges the system afterward? That question matters because drivers do not act alone. A driver receives instructions from the pit wall. He is told when to push, when to save, when to attack, when to defend, when to enter the pit lane carefully, and when every tenth matters. If a team tells its driver to be extra cautious because of a measurement concern, that caution costs time. And time is everything. Time decides whether a driver exits ahead of a rival. Time decides whether a tire window works. Time decides whether a podium is possible. So if one driver later gets relief, while another driver lost time trying to avoid the same problem, the anger is easy to understand. From the outside, it may look like paperwork. Inside the cockpit, it feels like being asked to trust a system that may punish both risk and caution. And that is impossible. Because drivers need clarity. They do not need every rule to favor them. They do not need every decision to be gentle. They need to know what the rule means before they are punished by it. Red Bull also had reason to care, because Isaac Hadjar was dragged into the consequences of the shifting result. For a young driver, a podium is not just a statistic. It can change the way the paddock looks at him. It can change confidence. It can change reputation. It can make a team believe a little harder, and make rivals pay attention a little sooner. So when a result appears to give that kind of moment, then the correction takes it away. The emotional whiplash is enormous. Hadjar did not create the pit lane measurement issue. Piastri did not create it. Russell did not create it. Gasly did not ask for the timing system to become the center of a scandal. Yet all of them were pulled into the same storm. That is why this controversy became so hard to resolve. Every driver affected can point to a different version of unfairness. Gasly can say he lost a podium because of flawed measurement. Russell can say his race was changed in a way no review can repair. Piastri can say the correction reshaped his result. Hadjar can say a career moment came and went because of decisions outside his control. And the worst part is, none of those arguments cancel the others out. They all exist together. That is when Formula 1 faces the kind of problem no regulation book handles neatly. The sport is not simply deciding who is right. It is deciding which unfairness becomes permanent. And that is what drivers are really lashing out against. Not just a penalty. Not just one race. Not just one governing body statement. They are reacting to the feeling that their careers can be pulled around by a system that acts with total authority, then admits uncertainty only after the consequences have already spread. That is a hard thing to accept. Because drivers already carry enough pressure. They are judged every lap. If they defend too hard, they are reckless. If they leave too much room, they are weak. If they complain, they are emotional. If they stay quiet, people say they accepted it. And now, after this scandal, they also have to wonder whether the official number that defines their race is as reliable as it appears. That doubt does not stay in Monaco. It follows them to the next Grand Prix. It follows them into every pit entry. It follows them into every radio message from the pit wall. It follows them when a stewarding notice appears and the whole garage goes still. Because now, the question behind every decision is bigger. Did the driver make a mistake? Or did the system create one?